Spotlight in the Garden State. Drama has also been building up when it comes to Governor John Corzine's financial restructuring and debt reduction proposal. What a mouthful. He's been on tour trying to sell the plan to residents in town hall meetings statewide. Some are still not buying it. Joanne Pileggi has more.
Come on up, Governor.
Let me just tell you that to start with, we have serious financial issues in the state.
Governor Corzine has typically followed a similar script as he begins his town hall meeting.
Let the people who came to listen, to try to understand what we're doing, get a chance.
But as he tried to talk about New Jersey's huge debt and predicted budget shortfalls, as well as his plan to remedy the situation, he was interrupted. The governor has an ambitious agenda to visit every county in the state to explain to voters his complex proposal to raise tolls to pay down the state's long-term obligations and to create a separate state agency to manage the highways and pay for much-needed transportation projects.
Somebody has got to say, how are we going to pay for the things that have been promised to the public?
Toward the end of the meeting, the governor takes questions and comments about the toll hike proposal. He got an earful from Ocean County residents.
You're going to overburden us with the amount of tolls you have to pay, and you're going to make the price of our goods and services go up, and we're not going to be able to afford them.
How much more do you think we as taxpayers can afford to pay?
Joining me right now are Joan Verplank, who is president of the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce, and also John Galandak, who is president of the Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey. Thank you very much, both, for joining us. So the governor is doing well, the governor is doing not so well, the governor wishes he would not do this at all. What?
Well, I'm sure the governor would love to not do this at all, but the bottom line is this is the result of decades of overspending, serious resources we have. It's never been an income problem, it's been an expense problem.
I mean, everybody's pretty familiar, I think, with the backstory. How is he going to sell that? Is he selling it? And from the meeting that we saw there, it looks as though that people just don't seem to be buying this plan.
Well, I don't think just yet. And I think part of the problem is it's not really a debt reduction plan, but really a debt shifting plan is one of our primary objections to it. You're taking one form of borrowing and replacing it with another. And that's one of our critical objections.
So what's the better solution?
Better solution is to separate two very important issues: transportation trust, which is one of those functions that government does very, very well. Turnpike Authority functions well. Don't mess up what's already working pretty well. Continue to fund that at the levels that's needed by any means necessary.
But you still have to reduce the debt, do you not?
Well, yes, but you could do that.
There has to be a way to do that.
Oh, and there are. There's two separate issues in our mind, and that's a better way to deal with two critical issues. Transportation trust on one hand, whether it's additional bonding, some other sort of user fee, like a gas tax, would be just fine. But to take and siphon off money from that thing that's working well and use it for other purposes is folly.
I think the main problem that the governor has, we all know there's a structural deficit, and every year, you know, there's some magic wand that gets waved and some fund that gets raided and something that happens and it goes away for a little while. But really, there's this overarching issue of it's got to stop somewhere. So I think the governor's approach is to do this, and he knows his stuff when it comes to these kinds of activities. I think his problem is it's so complicated that it's really hard for people to understand. You know, it's almost like a foreign language.
But is it really that complicated? I mean, when you actually go out and actually have to sell this debt, essentially, or you're selling the income, it's really not that complicated because it's almost like taking your credit card and paying off another credit card with it, is it not?
But it's a little bit worse than that, because that's part of the problem, but the other problem that we have with it is that part of the overhead, if you will, the fees to do this, the borrowing is still up in the air as to how much, but about $33 billion. About $6 billion of that, or slightly more than $6, won't even be available for the intent of the borrowing. $4 billion has to be set aside.
But that's the idea, is it not? I mean, the idea is to kind of build a sandbox, so to speak, to build some sort of insulation that this money goes for specific things and it doesn't get raided like it's been done for the past 30 years.
But that's not the whole story. $4 billion of it sets aside for interest payments because the tolls are not being raised for a few years. So fully, 20% of the borrowing will not go for the intended purposes.
But isn't that a technicality? I mean, really, I mean, because he's delaying the increase, true, but that amount of money has to be paid at some point anyway.
Indeed, but part of the reason it's that high is it's being used for other purposes other than transportation.
I mean,
issues.
it's like refinancing your mortgage and you're rolling in some of the stuff that's already sitting in your mortgage, right? A little bit of home improvement. I want a new bathroom, so I'm going to roll that in too.
A little bit more complicated than that,
Yeah.
and again, some of that gets siphoned off again. So you're siphoning off projects, non-transportation, as well as some extra overhead, which is large.
Here's what I think drives it, if we could look at it in more of a visual way. There is a pie called the state budget, and whether it's an 8-inch, 12-inch, 10-inch pie, we'll figure out between here and there. But somehow that pie has to be funded if you think of a pie chart. And I think the value of something like this is looking at a way to fund it that doesn't fall totally on New Jerseyans. I think that's the attractive part of this, because so much of what goes through our toll roads is pass-through traffic, comes from out of state. Right now, average toll road charges per mile about 9 cents. We're about 5 cents. It's just that we haven't kept up with raising tolls along, because it's always nobody wants to raise taxes.
Right.
And so you wait till you really need to do it, and everybody goes ballistic.
Right.
But I think people have to look at the pie.
Okay, we have to leave it there. Thank you both very much for joining us this morning. If you have any ideas or any topics that you would like to see discussed, please log on to my9tv.com. Click on the Public Affairs link. We would love to hear from you. That's it for today's show. Thank you very much for joining us. For My9, I'm Harry Martin. We'll see you next week on New Jersey Now.